I was standing there, champagne glass in hand, surrounded by our closest friends and family, when Nick cleared his throat. "I have an announcement," he said, his voice cutting through the celebratory chatter. The room quieted as everyone turned toward us, smiling expectantly. I thought he was going to make a toast about our future together. Instead, he put his arm around my business partner, Laura. "I can't go through with this wedding," he continued, his voice steady and cold. "Emily is too controlling, too invested in the business. I need someone who understands me." He looked at Laura, who had the decency to blush. "Someone I actually love." The room went completely silent. I felt like I was underwater. Sounds became muffled. My vision narrowed and my body went completely numb. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even put down my champagne glass. My parents' faces crumpled in confusion. My best friend started moving toward me but seemed to be walking in slow motion. I just stood there, expressionless, as Nick continued. "I know this is sudden, but Laura and I have connected on a deeper level. Emily's always been too focused on work to see what's been happening right in front of her." Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "Is this a joke?" But it wasn't. The evidence was right there. Nick's hand on Laura's waist, her guilty expression, the way they leaned into each other like they'd done this 100 times before. My engagement ring felt suddenly heavy, like a weight pulling me down into the floor. "We're leaving now," Nick announced, as if this were a normal conclusion to an engagement party. "I'll be by tomorrow to get my things." He didn't even look at me as they walked out, hand in hand, the door closing behind them with a quiet click that somehow felt louder than if he'd slammed it. My best friend reached me first, wrapping her arm around my shoulders. I'm so sorry," she whispered. But I wasn't listening. I was watching the door, thinking about what Nick didn't know, what he'd completely forgotten in his rush to humiliate me and start his new life with Laura. He was smiling as he left my engagement party, not realizing he'd just lost far more than a fiancé. I met Nick at a sustainable fashion conference 3 years ago. I was there representing the investment firm I worked for, looking for promising eco-startups to fund. He was there with a booth showcasing his designs. Minimalist, ethical clothing that was actually stylish. I was impressed by his vision, his passion, and yes, his charm. When he talked about sustainable supply chains and ethical manufacturing, his eyes lit up in a way that made me want to be part of whatever he was building. We exchanged numbers for business purposes, but were dating within a week. Our relationship moved fast, partly because we were genuinely compatible, and partly because our professional lives quickly became intertwined. Nick had the creative vision for his brand, but he lacked the business know-how and, more importantly, the capital to scale his ideas. I had both. When he mentioned needing investors, I didn't hesitate. I believed in him and his vision. I emptied my savings account and took out a loan against my 401k to inject the initial $75,000 into what would become Green Thread, our sustainable clothing brand. I spent weekends helping him set up the business structure, nights reviewing manufacturer contracts, and early mornings calling potential retail partners before my actual job started. I was exhausted but exhilarated. We were building something together. Looking back, the red flags were there from the beginning. Like when Green Thread landed its first major retail partnership, and Nick did an interview with a local business magazine. He referred to himself as the founder and visionary without mentioning my role at all. When I brought it up, he said, "They were asking about the creative direction, not the money side. I would have mentioned you if it came up." I chose to believe him. Or when we hired our first employees, and he introduced me as his girlfriend who helps out sometimes, despite the fact that I was handling all the finances, operations, and business development. I told myself he was just simplifying things for new team members. Then came Laura. I was the one who suggested hiring her. She had an impressive PR background and connections in the fashion industry. She was smart and charismatic, exactly what our growing brand needed. And for a while, everything seemed perfect. The business was thriving, our engagement was announced, and wedding planning was underway. But then Nick started having more strategic meetings with Laura. They'd come back to the office laughing about inside jokes. He'd text constantly, even during our rare date nights, claiming it was urgent business. When I expressed concern, he called me paranoid and possessive. So I backed off, focused on the wedding plans, and ignored the knot in my stomach that grew tighter every time they disappeared into a conference room together. I was cleaning up after the disastrous engagement party, mindlessly gathering abandoned champagne glasses and crumpled napkins, when I found it. A crumpled receipt that had fallen from Nick's jacket. It was for a weekend at a luxury hotel, dated 2 weeks earlier when Nick had told me he was visiting a supplier in Portland. The receipt showed room service charges for 2 people, an expensive bottle of champagne, and a spa treatment for Mr. and Mrs. Williams, using our soon-to-be-married name for a weekend with Laura. My hands shook as I searched through his desk drawer at home. There, I found more. Receipts for jewelry I'd never received, dinner dates at restaurants we'd never visited together, and most damning of all, a statement for the corporate credit card I'd helped him set up. He'd been funding their affair with company money, my investment. I couldn't sleep that night. At 3 a.m., I emailed our business attorney asking about the ownership structure of Green Thread. His response came surprisingly quickly. As per the documents, you own 80% of the business. Nick owns 20%. Is there an issue I should be aware of? I stared at the email, trying to make sense of it. Then I remembered. In his rush to get the business started, Nick had signed the papers I'd prepared without reading them thoroughly. At the time, I'd planned to adjust the ownership later to make it more equal as he put in sweat equity. But we'd gotten busy, and it had never happened. Legally, I owned Green Thread. That same morning, my phone buzzed with notifications. Nick had updated his Instagram. A photo of him and Laura at our favorite restaurant. His caption reading, "When you finally find the right one. My entrepreneur, Parker power couple." I threw my phone across the room. Throughout the day, friends sent me screenshots of Nick's posts along with concerned messages. Some forwarded things he'd been saying, that I was clingy, that I'd tried to take over his business, that Laura understood his vision in ways I never could. The rage building inside me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. I wanted to storm into the office, change the locks, and publicly humiliate him the way he'd humiliated me. But something stopped me. A cold, clear thought cut through the emotional chaos. Why fight for someone who didn't value me when I could take back what was rightfully mine? That was the moment everything changed. Sitting on my kitchen floor at 4 a.m., surrounded by receipts that proved both his financial and emotional infidelity, I made a decision. I would not be the hysterical ex-fiancé. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me beg or break. I would be strategic. I opened my laptop and started making a plan. First, I documented every instance of company fund misuse, creating a spreadsheet of his unauthorized personal expenses. Then I drafted emails to our key suppliers and clients, not to badmouth Nick, but to subtly reinforce that I was their primary contact for any issues or opportunities. Next, I called our attorney to schedule a meeting about protecting the company during a personal transition. His diplomatic phrase for what was happening. I needed to understand all my options before making any moves. The final step was the hardest. I blocked Nick's number. Not permanently, but I needed time to think without his manipulation. Within hours, he was emailing, messaging on every platform, even having Laura reach out. I ignored them all. When he finally managed to reach me through a mutual friend's phone, I answered calmly. "I need you to sign some paperwork for a loan application," he said. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he'd done. The business needs capital for the fall production run. "I'll look at it when I have time," I replied, my voice neutral. "Emily, this is urgent. Stop being difficult." I hung up without responding. That night, I slept soundly for the first time since the engagement party. 3 weeks after the engagement party, things began unraveling for Nick. I hadn't taken any drastic action yet. I didn't need to. The business that he thought he controlled was showing him exactly how dependent it was on me. It started with small issues. The fabric supplier in Thailand, with whom I'd built a personal relationship, suddenly had quality concerns that needed addressing before shipping our largest order of the season. The boutique owners who'd committed to carrying our fall line were calling Nick directly with questions he couldn't answer about pricing structures I'd negotiated. The Instagram influencers who'd agreed to promote our collection, connections through my college roommate, were reconsidering the partnership due to scheduling conflicts. Nick's increasingly frantic texts showed his dawning realization. "The Thai supplier won't return my calls. Can you reach out?" "What did you tell Bluestone Boutique?" "They're asking about some discount we supposedly discussed." "Did you cancel the influencer campaign?" "Sarah says she got an email about putting the collaboration on hold." I responded minimally, if at all. "I'm still processing things," or "I'm taking some time for myself right now." Professional, distant, uninvolved. Then came the financial issues. The business credit line I'd personally guaranteed was suddenly frozen. A simple call to the bank where my family had a long-standing relationship had seen to that. The accountant needed to review some discrepancies before processing payroll. The landlord for our studio space emailed about clarifying the lease terms. Nick's messages grew more desperate. "This is our business, Emily. You can't just abandon it because you're upset. I need access to the QuickBooks account. The payroll service is asking for verification. Laura says you've been calling our clients. What are you telling them?" Next came the attempted manipulation. "I know I handled things badly. We should talk about this like adults." Then guilt. "People's livelihoods depend on this business. You're not just punishing me." Then anger. "This is completely unprofessional. I built this brand from nothing." Finally, panic. Please, Em. I don't know what to do. Just tell me what you want. That last one made me smile. Finally, the right question. I agreed to meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe downtown where the baristas knew me well enough to keep my coffee coming, but not well enough to be interested in our conversation. I arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a corner table with good lighting and enough privacy for what would come next. Nick arrived looking like a mess. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing a wrinkled green thread shirt that was meant to be an inventory sample, not daily wear. He spotted me and hurried over, relief washing over his face. Emily, thank God. Things are falling apart. He dropped into the seat across from me. The production run is delayed. Retailers are threatening to cancel orders, and Laura... Where is Laura? I interrupted, my voice level. He blinked. She's been busy with other clients. She says the green thread situation is too complicated right now. Complicated, I repeated. Is that what you call it when you use company funds to finance your affair? The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? I placed a folder on the table between us. Room service for 2 at the Heathman Hotel. Jewelry from Tiffany's that I never received. Dinners at restaurants I've never been to. All charged to the company card that I set up. That company card. I can explain. You also used company funds to buy Laura's engagement gift. That Cartier bracelet she was wearing at our engagement party. Nice touch. His mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. But that's not even the most interesting part. I continued, sliding a document across the table. This is the ownership agreement for Green Thread, the one you signed without reading because you were, and I quote, too busy being the visionary to worry about paperwork. He looked down at the document, frowning as he scanned it. I could pinpoint the exact moment he understood. His eyes widened and he looked up at me with a mix of disbelief and growing horror. 80%? He whispered. That can't be right. It is right. It's also legally binding. You own 20% of Green Thread, Nick. I own the rest. He shook his head, desperation creeping into his voice. But I'm the face of the brand. I'm the designer. This was my vision. And I'm the one who funded it, structured it, built the relationships that made it successful, and prevented you from running it into the ground with your complete lack of business sense. I kept my voice calm, professional. The vision means nothing without execution. He leaned forward, switching tactics. Emily, I know you're hurt. I handled the breakup badly, and I'm sorry. But we built this together. You can't just take it away. I'm not taking anything away. I'm asserting my legal rights as majority owner. Rights you gave me when you signed that document. What do you want? His voice cracked. Money? You want me to repay the investment? I can figure something out. I want you to step down, I said simply. Completely. You'll transfer your remaining shares to me as compensation for the company funds you misappropriated for personal use, which, by the way, constitutes fraud. In exchange, I won't press charges or sue you for breach of fiduciary duty. His face hardened. You're bluffing. You wouldn't destroy everything we built just to get back at me. I pulled out another document. This is a list of every unauthorized expense you charged to the company over the past 6 months. Over $27,000 in personal expenditures, Nick. That's not a gray area. That's criminal misuse of company funds. I've highlighted the expenses clearly related to Laura, but I'm sure a forensic accountant would find more. He paled again, but rallied. No one would work with you if you did this. They all know me as the founder, the creative force. They know you as the guy who announced he was leaving his fiancée for another woman at their engagement party. I cut in. News travels fast in this industry. You're not exactly winning the public relations battle. As if on cue, the cafe door opened and Laura walked in. She spotted us and hesitated, clearly surprised to see me. Nick waved her over frantically. Laura, thank God. Emily is trying to force me out of my own company. She's claiming she owns 80%. She does own 80%. Laura interrupted, not meeting his eyes. I checked the business registration records. They're public, Nick. He stared at her, betrayed. You knew? She sat down, looking uncomfortable. I found out yesterday. I was going to tell you, but... She glanced at me. I think I should recuse myself from this situation. I've accepted a position with another agency, effective immediately. Nick's mouth fell open. What? You can't just... We're together now. Laura's eyes darted between us. Nick, I think you misunderstood the situation. I was flattered by your attention, and yes, we had some moments. But I'm not looking to be part of whatever this is. She stood up. I'm sorry. To both of you. She walked out without looking back. The silence that followed was profound. Nick stared at the table, his world visibly collapsing around him. When he finally looked up, the fight had gone out of him. "What are my options?" he asked quietly. I slid 2 documents across the table. Option 1, you sign over your remaining shares, agree to a non-compete clause, and walk away with a clean record. Option 2, I file fraud charges, sue for damages, and make sure everyone in the industry knows exactly why GreenThread's visionary founder is no longer with the company. His hand trembled as he reached for the first document. "Do you have a pen?" I handed him one, watching as he signed away the business he thought was his. When he finished, he looked up at me, eyes hollow. "I really did love you, you know. At the beginning." I stood up, gathering the signed documents. Not enough to treat me with respect. Not enough to be honest. Not enough to see me as an equal partner in our business or our life. I tucked the papers into my bag. "Goodbye, Nick." I walked out of the cafe, leaving him sitting there alone. For the first time since our engagement party, I felt the weight lifting from my shoulders. I hadn't lost anything worth keeping. 1 year later, I'm sitting in the GreenThread studio watching our new spring collection come to life. The company has grown beyond what Nick and I initially envisioned. We're now stocked in major department stores nationwide, our online sales have tripled, and we've been featured in Vogue's Brands That Matter issue. After Nick signed over his shares, I rebranded slightly. Same sustainable ethos, but with designs that better reflected my aesthetic, not just his. Turns out I had more of an eye for fashion than he ever gave me credit for. I also expanded our mission, partnering with women's empowerment organizations and implementing a program to hire and train women re-entering the workforce after life setbacks. The team has changed too. I hired a talented young designer who'd been rejected by Nick multiple times for being too unconventional. Her creations are now our best sellers. Our marketing director used to work for a major fashion house, but left because of their unsustainable practices. They bring perspectives Nick would have dismissed outright, and the business is thriving because of it. As for Nick, I hear things through industry gossip. He tried to launch another sustainable brand, but without my connections, funding, or business acumen, it failed within 6 months. The last I heard, he was working as a sales associate at a mall clothing store, telling anyone who would listen about the successful fashion brand he used to run. Laura remained true to her word and disappeared from both our lives. She sent me a short email a few months after our cafe meeting, apologizing again and admitting that Nick had pursued her aggressively, exaggerating his role in the company and minimizing our relationship. I didn't respond. Some bridges stay burned. Sometimes I take out my engagement ring, which I never returned. Not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder of how easy it is to mistake flashiness for substance, charm for character. It sits in my desk drawer at the office, a small monument to a lesson expensively learned. The most unexpected outcome of this whole ordeal wasn't professional but personal. I discovered parts of myself I never knew existed. Strength I didn't know I had, creativity I'd suppressed, and boundaries I'd failed to enforce. What I thought was the worst day of my life turned out to be the beginning of something far better than what I'd lost. There's a quote I keep on my office wall now. Sometimes the things we think we want most are actually standing in the way of what we deserve. A client gave it to me, not knowing my history, but it resonated deeply. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had a betrayal that ended up being a blessing in disguise? Did you ever find that losing something you thought you wanted actually led you to something better? And would you have handled things differently in my position? Or do you think some people simply need to experience the consequences of their actions to truly learn from them? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.